CBT News celebrates 12 years of delivering news, content, coaching, and analysis to the retail automotive community.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. From negotiating historic pay raises for Air National Guard pilots to leading thousands of airmen on missions, Jim Camp has spent his career mastering the art of strategy, negotiation, and influence. Now, the retired Major General of the United States Air Force is helping leaders and teams sharpen their skills. Today, Jim joins us to share what it takes to succeed at the negotiation table, and we'll also learn about his latest book, Lead from No, a systemic approach to leadership negotiations. Thanks so much for joining us on the show, Jim.
Thank you for having me, Jim. It's my pleasure.
Sure. So tell me, how did your experiences as a Major General shape your negotiation approach?
Well, that's a great question. And actually, I would say my negotiation approach that I learned from my father, Jim Camp Sr., earlier in my career actually helped form me as a leader. And it actually, in a lot of ways, gave me more opportunities, I believe, to kind of move up within the Air Force simply because I was able to negotiate agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of the opposite. My negotiation approach, I believe, equipped me to be a little bit more successful as a leader.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's pretty cool. Was your father also in the armed services?
Yes, my father was a pilot in the Air Force. He was an airline pilot, and he wrote a book back in the early 2000s called Start with No.
Wow.
And that was really the platform that he grew the company from. So that was kind of our, I guess, getting our place on the map in the world of negotiation.
That's fantastic. Wow, that's father taking after son there. Or say son taking after father. That's pretty cool. So trust and vision are recurring themes in your leadership style. How do these concepts play into your negotiation strategy?
Okay, so one of the things that we believe at Camp Negotiations is that one of the quickest ways to build trust with your opponent, somebody you're negotiating with, and when I say opponent, that's not a negative connotation, but one of the easiest ways to build trust is to acknowledge that your opponent has the right to veto.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Any deal that you're negotiating, when you give someone the right to say no and you treat them with respect and really try to focus on the challenges or problems that they're trying to solve, we transition from this, both sides want to try to negotiate a deal that they're both happy with. But when we can understand our opponent's vision, what motivates them, what they're really trying to solve with a potential agreement, and we give them the right to say no, which means we just look at no as a decision. It's not a negative. That process in and of itself builds trust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the two go hand in hand. The more you struggle to understand your opponent's vision and how you can help them, your respect and demeanor that you bring to the negotiating table just naturally builds trust.
Yeah.
And the more they trust you, the more they'll share.
That's right. Yeah, it makes sense. So the military often operates in high stakes, high pressure environments. What are the top lessons from your time in the Air Force that leaders can apply to negotiations in their own fields?
Okay, so if I could use an example, and this is similar in the military, if you look at folks that are in high stakes emotional environments like first responders,
Mm-hmm.
the medical profession, for example.
Sure.
And you think about, when a patient is wheeled into an operating room and you can literally watch the team kind of systematically approach that problem that the patient's having, that system that they have, or the system that a military pilot learns to operate, provides emotional control.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, the higher the stakes, the more it's important to have a systematic approach so that you're not looking, like if you take a high pressure negotiation, for example, where there's a lot riding on that negotiation. If you look at it from the starting point until the conclusion, it becomes overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
right? It can emotionally consume you. And what we find is that when we approach a deal or any intense situation with kind of our systematic approach in place, and that's something that doesn't come easy,
Mm-hmm.
I might add, to adapt to a system, that gives you, I guess, the ability to understand where you are every step of the way, and your system will tell you, okay, your next step should be this consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So systematic control, systematic training is what we're taught in the military. And that really gives you an edge, especially, if you're in a combat environment, or if you're in just a very stressful situation. It lowers that. And I guess that little voice in your head that's telling you, hey, there's a lot riding on this.
Sure.
Don't make a mistake.
That's right.
So systematic approach, and that's exactly what we try to do with negotiation, is break it down and really understand what we're doing and why.
Mm-hmm. Never let them see you sweat, and stay calm and carry on, right?
Well, that obviously everybody out there, I'm sure, will tell you that's easier said than done.
That's right.
But it's kind of like, we plan for contingencies with military operations. You plan for what you think is going to happen, and we do the same thing in negotiation. Unfortunately, when the game starts, or when as it unfolds, there's a lot of things that can throw you off guard, and the best you can do is prepare. The more you prepare for a big deal, the more you can, I guess, when you're executing, focus on that preparation. And then it's real important to debrief what just took place. When we make mistakes, hopefully we can recover from those. And, that's one thing I learned about flying airplanes in the military. You're going to make mistakes almost every second, right? You're constantly correcting your previous mistakes. And in some ways, negotiation's the same type of an environment. It's dynamic, and that dynamic nature of negotiation makes it challenging emotionally.
Sure. And negotiation isn't something that most people learn in school, or maybe even from their parents, although negotiation is something you are doing your entire life, whether it be you're negotiating with your spouse as to where to eat dinner, or you're negotiating your contract at work, or you're negotiating for a big deal as a leader of a company. I mean, negotiation is everywhere in life, is it not?
Yes, that's a great assessment. In fact, I'll take it a step further. When we define the word negotiation, our definition is it's the effort to bring about agreement between two or more parties, with all parties having the right to veto, having the right to say no. And I personally dedicated my book Lead from No to my grandchildren, because they will tell you that when they hear the word no, that's not the end. It's kind of a start of an opportunity to negotiate. So the best negotiators out there are children, because they're relentless.
Yes,
right?
they are.
If dad says no, they'll go to mom, and vice versa. So, but yeah, when you look at negotiation through the lens of that it's just trying to reach an agreement. I mean, agreements are all around us every day. Which was part of my argument, that leadership is a form of negotiation, because that leader-follower bond is something you can't take for granted. People leave companies all the time, and typically it's because they've either lost trust, or they're not connected well enough with their leadership team.
Right.
So everything is a negotiation. Every agreement we make now, it's obviously some negotiations are easier. I find that I just give in when my wife says she wants to go get sushi. I'll say, I'm not a big fan, but hey, last night I went and got sushi because
there you go.
I didn't feel like negotiating, Jim.
That's right.
I was at a good point.
Now tonight you might use that chip on something that you want, right? Last night we went to sushi. Tonight we're going to go to where I want to go to.
Right. Maybe usually I save that chip for when I'm really anxious to go to a sports bar and watch a football game. But yeah, that's negotiations all around us every day.
It really is. There's no question about it. And as I said, few people are really learn a formal way to negotiate, whether it be in school or in their family or what have you. But it's such a part of our lives, as you were mentioning, with your grandkids or your children or parents that have got little ones or what have you. It starts that young, doesn't it? I mean, from what they want and what they need, and I mean, I know that my kids with my grandchildren, that's what they're doing all day long. We want to go here, not here. We want to stay up later. Everything is always a negotiation.
Right. Yeah, totally. Something interesting happens though with you bring up kids. They're not afraid of the word no, but for some reason, as we progress in life and we hit adolescence and we start getting into, like, for example, I was rejected by pretty much every Ivy League school when I was trying to, get in for undergrad.
Sure.
And we start associating the word no with rejection or failure.
Right.
And really it's not. A no is just a decision. For me, it was an opportunity to go a new direction.
Yep.
And I've just found through my career, when one door closes, another one opens. So the other interesting thing about negotiation over time, we begin to believe that it's about compromise. It's about give and take. Maybe we're looking for a win-win solution, and it's not that deals can't turn out that way. We might get what we want, and our opposition might get what they want. But when we approach it with a compromise-based mindset, which is really what we're trying to undo for most people from what they've learned their whole life.
Yeah.
The moment you start demonstrating your willingness to compromise, the other side is going to see that and take advantage of that. So we're trying to help our clients avoid unnecessary compromise and change their mindset so that they're willing to drive the deal to a decision.
Sure.
If we reach a no, that's just an opportunity to find out where we're falling short. And then in the end, if we make a decision to compromise, it makes sense to us. So it's not that we never compromise. We just try to avoid that tendency to, once we feel pressure, to fall back to our walk away point, or, well, as long as we get this, we're happy. So unfortunately, compromise is kind of ingrained in our society. And it's not a bad thing, but the willingness to compromise unnecessarily too soon in any deal, you're going to leave things on the table, and that's
right.
really what we do for our clients.
That's right. That's right. And so many people today, whether they're negotiating the price of a car, they're negotiating the price of a house, they're negotiating, or I should say, shopping for a house or a car, there's going to be negotiations that are involved, even to the point that when you're asking for the best price on something, or they're asking for, the best terms or what have you, the people that and the companies that are giving that are almost anticipating that you're going to come back and want to negotiate, right? So if you just take that first offer and say, wow, I can't believe I'm paying this, rather than saying, this doesn't work for me, can we negotiate on this? 9 times out of 10, you find that people say, well, yeah, sure, that's what I was anticipating. That's why I gave you the number that I gave you, right?
Yes. We'll just use a typical business scenario as an example. If we submit a bid for a project, and let's say our bid is higher than our competitors. So if we're coaching a client, they submit a bid on a project and our price is much higher. The moment our opposition says, well, this is a non-starter.
Yeah.
Or you better sharpen your pencil.
Yeah.
Or I can't take this to my board. I can't, you're too, or just simply they're expressing you're too expensive. There's a reason, even though you're more expensive, that you are in the bidding process in and of itself.
That's right.
So we have to figure out what differentiates our deal from someone else's. And sometimes it is about price, but other times the challenge is, we have a saying with our clients, when someone expresses their discontent, they're not happy with the price or they're not happy with the terms, that's when you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, let's focus on their decision making and not assume that, and we see this in real estate car deals all the time, the salesman all of a sudden feels this pressure and they might say, well, okay, I'm going to cave on price. And let's say they give up a whatever percentage of the deal.
Right.
But has our opponent made a decision yet? Is it truly too expensive?
Yeah.
Or were they going to buy the car anyway, but they feel compelled to negotiate?
That's right.
Or they love the house. When I walked into a house with my wife one time, I said, I know you love this house and I know we're going to buy it, but let's not let the seller know this in the first 5 minutes.
Right.
Right. Let's try to calmly approach this and try to find out what they're motivated by, so we can understand their decision more so than us. So this idea of, and Chris Voss wrote a great book, Never Split the Difference.
Yep.
And what that means is, when you feel that pressure, be careful of making assumptions about what's going to be required to get the deal done.
Yeah.
So sometimes we see companies give up too much too quickly.
That's right.
But if they become comfortable being uncomfortable and they're willing to let the decision play out,
yeah,
oftentimes we can find out what the real issue is, and that's our best opportunity to walk away with the highest profit margin that we can. So it's a difficult game, but it's extremely rewarding when you see someone, when they know that they did the best they could at the table, and their company's going to thrive because of it.
That's right. That's right. Boy, it's so true what you just said. And oftentimes people will focus so much on the number that they gave, the price that they gave, and not focus on rebuilding value in the product that they're getting, so that it's a clear understanding as to what that price was based on. So many times you'll find people say, well, actually, now that you're reviewing all of the things, it's not apples to oranges. You're doing a lot more than the other company was doing that came in with a lower bid. But very often, and I've been in that situation myself, I've fallen prey to it where I focus just on a bigger discount and I don't revisit the value that they're getting in the product that I'm selling, right?
Correct. And that's our starting point in any negotiation. What is it that we deliver?
Right.
How do we deliver it? And how does our opponent really benefit from what separates us from our competition?
Right.
Right. So in any agreement, when you focus on their world and how what you apply can help them, you have a much better opportunity of securing a higher price, because they may realize, well, there's a reason that I need the top of the line manufacturing equipment, or there's a reason that I'm buying this type of a vehicle because I need dependability, I need reliability. So it's really all in the mind of the person sitting across from you. What do they see? And that's the key. What do they see? And that is the ticket to reaching an agreement. Oftentimes we try to convince and push too hard from our side of the table of why we're better than our competition. But that can be seen as being a pressure tactic. The really good negotiators help people see and discover what they provide and help them make a good decision either way. So again, this all to me comes back to emotion and the fear associated with, am I getting a good deal? Right. And that's on both sides of the table.
That's right. That's right. So no is a powerful word. Tell us a little bit about your newest book, Lead from No, which is a great title of the book. So tell us the motivation behind writing the book, and then what you want the readers to leave with.
Okay. The motivation behind writing the book, I was in Boston, and my son was in a master's program at Harvard, and he was graduating from MIT with his MBA.
Wow. And
we went into the bookstore, and he said, "Hey, Dad, look at this. My grandfather's book is still in hardback on the top shelf there.
Pretty cool.
And it's Start with No is required reading in most graduate schools. So when I looked at that, he said, you ought to write a book about leadership, because you've been telling me that leadership is negotiation. It's a form of negotiation." So that really inspired me to write the book. Lead from No, what that implies, oftentimes leaders make the mistake of thinking that they have the ability to tell people what to do, right? And especially in the military, we all take orders. I mean, even at my top rank, I had 6 bosses. We all have 6 bosses, I always tell people. But the really good ones, the ones that really were able to help move people in the same direction, weren't afraid to give them the right to say no. They weren't afraid to go into a meeting and say, "Look, I don't care who's right here. I care about what's right. So help me solve this problem. Let's collaborate." And often, it's misconstrued. Leaders think that that's a sign of weakness. It's not.
Yeah.
So in my book, I spent a lot of time talking about some of the mistakes I made as a leader. Kind of my journey through the military, had a lot of interesting negotiations I worked on, but I also kind of intertwined in there a lot of business examples. And I had a lot of help. I had a lot of folks that contributed to the book based on their experience. And all of it, the main message is this: if you lead people, you negotiate every day. We call our system the No system of negotiation. So if you use that as your foundation, it's going to make you more successful negotiating. And interestingly, Jim, the same characteristics that I feel make you a good leader also make you a good negotiator, and vice versa. It's all about trust, respect, and allowing your coworker, your opponent, to communicate with you openly and not fear the word no. So that's, I hope people find it interesting. It was very challenging to write, because I'm not a writer, but I had a great team at Manuscripts that helped me. So I'm very thankful for those folks.
That's fantastic. Jim Camp, co-owner and coach at Camp Negotiations. He's also an author, recently retired Major General in the United States Air Force. Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you for all of your time today. We're going to have a link right below this video so you too can get a copy of this incredible book, which I highly recommend. If you're in business, if you are a small business owner, a medium-sized business owner, if you are married or you hope to be married, to learn how to negotiate is vital. So thanks again. I really appreciate it, Jim, for joining us on the show. I know a lot of people get a lot out of this segment.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Jim. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much.